So maybe before we dive into the questions, I'd love to give all of our panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves. So maybe Michelle, I'll start with you and we can just work our way down.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Magnolia. My name is Michelle O'Keary. I am the Executive Director of the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation. I am Métis Cree, a citizen of the Métis Nation of Alberta with deep roots in the Red River Settlement in Manitoba, as well as the Fort Belknap Indian Reserve in Montana. I've been in this role just under a year, and it's really exciting to be a part of such an incredible network through NACCA, the Indigenous financial institutions across Canada, and to be building out programs and services that support Indigenous entrepreneurship. I'll talk a little bit about what we do later, but really excited to be part of this conversation today.
Tansei, Anthony Nasika Soon, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Ochinye, Langley, BC, Nawikin, Nia Mitchif. Hello, my name is Anthony Wingham. I am from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. I live in Langley, BC. I am Métis from Saskatchewan. My family comes from the Fort Qu'Appelle area with family names Boyer, Lapierre, and Garneau. And I'm an entrepreneur. I have a couple successful businesses, Nua's Acres and Métis Print. And I'm very honored to be sitting on the council and excited to be here and share some of my insight today. Thank you.
And say good morning. My name is Holly Achkute. I live and work and play in the traditional territory of Treaty 7, and I am from Cowces First Nation in Treaty 4 territory, southeast Saskatchewan. I am the head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and the director of Indigenous and Northern Entrepreneurs at Futurpreneur Canada. All of that plus my last name all fits on a business card somehow, and I have to memorize what my role is. But really, really honored to lead two amazing initiatives at Futurpreneur. I'll just do a really quick overview of Futurpreneur. We're a nonprofit organization in Canada operating since 1996. We're turning 30 next year. We support young entrepreneurs coast to coast launch businesses between the ages of 18 and 39. We can now launch support entrepreneurs up to 2 years in business with up to $75,000 in financing. And we also, all of our loans are hand matched with a mentor. So we do some really great, exciting stuff, amazing programs to support entrepreneurs in their startup journey, and really excited and honored to be on this panel. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Logan Smith. I work, play, and live on Vancouver Island, BC. First of all, I'd like to say I'm really happy to be here, really honored. It's my first year attending an event like this, so everything's brand new to me. I had no idea the kind of scale of this event and how nice it would be, so I just wanted to thank everyone, Magnolia, Chad for organizing everything, our sponsor, Futurpreneur, for making sure all the youth were taken care of on the way here. And while we stay, I'd like to thank all the NACCA board, who we shared a lunch with yesterday. It was great to meet everyone. So anyways, just the thank yous, the IFIs, I could keep going, but I'll stop it there. Like I said, my name is Logan Smith, Peguis First Nation in Manitoba. I'm a founder of Axelite Contracting Limited, which is a construction, trade, carpentry contracting company. We do wood framing, that's our specialty. Lots of other specialties inside the carpentry scope as well. I love to teach, and so training is a big part of my career. Over the weekend that I've been here, I've heard a lot of talk about the lack of young people getting into skilled trades and the need for training. So that's something that I'm really passionate about, something that I'd like to be a part of. And this seems like the right place to start talking about that. So thank you.
Thank you to all of our panelists. And Logan is one of 15 youth delegates. You probably saw him on stage yesterday with everyone else that we invited to attend our Indigenous Prosperity Forum this year. We also held a dedicated workshop on Tuesday with the youth, so that was a really great opportunity to network, get to know one another, dive into some topics. We brought in, some coaches to work through different, business challenges or opportunities the youth delegates were facing. And as Logan pointed out, we are so thankful and appreciative for Futurpreneur Canada for stepping up and sponsoring the youth delegate program. NACCA and Futurpreneur have had a really good partnership over the last number of years since I've been with NACCA, so it's just been great to partner on this initiative as well. And I guess I didn't really introduce myself, so I'm Magnolia Perron. I'm the Director of Strategy and Partnerships at NACCA. I've been with the organization for the last 5 years and started with the organization when we were rolling out our Indigenous Women in Youth Entrepreneurship initiative, so I just feel really privileged and honored to have the opportunity to work on those programs and connect with amazing people like our panelists today. And maybe I'll come back to Michelle. Maybe you can just share a high level what the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation is and what maybe your mandate is.
Absolutely. So for those who aren't familiar, the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation was actually built out of NACCA. NACCA identified that there was a gap specifically for early stage entrepreneurs who maybe weren't ready to go to an Indigenous financial institution for funding yet. There was a bit of a skills gap, support that was needed there, and they identified kind of 4 key areas that those resources were needed. The first was around financial literacy and business acumen. The second was digital literacy and access. The next was around mentorship and support, really being able to connect with those who have been there before. And then the last is access to capital, small-scale grants to support them in really the ideation phase. And so they came up with this incredible concept to develop a foundation that could go out to corporate Canada, foundations, other partners in the ecosystem to bring funds together to address that gap. And that's exactly what we're doing. I mentioned earlier, we're kind of in our first big year. I started about a year ago in June. And so we're really excited about the progress that we've made thus far. We actually did a MoneySmarts facilitator training. It's one of our very first programs that we've launched last year, just this morning, with folks who are quite interested in that if you stop by our booth. And then we're, right after this panel, going to launch our second program, which is our Launchpad program, which I'll talk a little bit about later.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. And it's been great working with you over the last year as you stepped into this role, as both NACCA and the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation are working to develop programs and initiatives to support youth. At NACCA, we're, over the last year, working closely with the Indigenous Business Youth Advisory Council, have been developing programs for Indigenous young people. And so we're excited, or I'm excited to share that this spring we're launching our National Indigenous Youth Entrepreneurship Program. We have about 25 Indigenous financial institutions that are signing on to deliver this program across the country to entrepreneurs in their region. Through this program, they'll be bringing on dedicated business support officers to work with youth clients, do outreach in community, put on training and workshops on financial literacy and to build their business acumen. But maybe even more excitingly, we have invested the capital to develop a national Indigenous youth loan fund. So we'll be able to start youth who are starting out to access microloans through that program. So we're really, really excited about this program, and more details to come, and we hope to sign on more Indigenous financial institutions in the future. But let me pause there, and I want to hear more from our entrepreneurs at the table. So maybe I'll start with you, Anthony. If you could tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey and what motivated you to start a business at a young age.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. Well, my life, I come from a single parent household, grew up on welfare, so the likelihood of me actually sitting on the stage was quite low. So at a young age, I started, doing newspapers, chopping wood, mowing the lawn, doing anything I could get a couple dollars in my pocket. And I guess that's really where the fire started. And then actually, my New as Acres business really came out from the last trade war we had. So the last time we had the president down in the United States, there was a trade war, and the price of pecans actually collapsed. So trying to be the best son-in-law I could for my father-in-law, I tried to figure out a different way to sell the pecans, and that's really where New as Acres kind of comes from. So we were able to have a little bit of success from that, and that's really kind of where my entrepreneurial spirit comes from, is just trying new things, doing things on my own. I was never really able to work for somebody, so, and here I am up on stage speaking about my entrepreneurial journey, but that's kind of where it kind of came from, was just, the lifestyle that I grew up in. I wanted to be my own boss and wanted to have a little bit of name for myself, and here I am up on stage.
Amazing, thank you. So Logan, you were nominated by one of our Indigenous financial institutions to be here. From what I understand, you've actually been in business for almost probably nearly 10 years. So tell us a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey and what motivated you to start your business.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I've been a carpenter for 10 years. Haven't quite been in business for that long. It's been about 5 that I've been running my own business. And yeah, really just when I started working in the trades and tried out a few different companies, even sort of a couple different trades. I originally looked into electrical and was thinking of doing an electrical apprenticeship. I ended up taking a summer job on a framing crew to try that out while I was waiting for electrical school. And it's been the longest summer job of my life. I kind of fell in love with carpentry and the craft of it. So, I mean, I think that's super important. Whatever you do, you have to love it in some capacity, whether it's your day-to-day, what you're doing with your body, or at least you're getting some kind of reward from it in a different way. So if you're helping other people, if you're, passing on knowledge, like I think that's really important to enjoy it. And so I did. But I didn't always enjoy the people who were teaching me, or I didn't always agree with their style. So I figured if I was staying in the skilled trades, if I was going to continue to do, a manual labor job, that I wanted to do it for myself. Because, I mean, it does wear on your body over time. You get sore. Things can happen. Accidents can happen. So I thought, you know what? If I'm doing all this and sort of, doing a hard physical job, I want to do it for myself, not somebody else. So that was big for me. And same with the teaching styles. They weren't always positive. I took good things from the negative experiences still. But I think a lot of people might have given up at some points and maybe not gone through with it. And I'm sure I would be fine, but I don't know what I would look like, what my life would look like if I wasn't, if I didn't have the determination to sort of push through that, even if it wasn't enjoyable. So I'm really glad I did, and I'm really happy to be here and where I am. I'm kind of new to the Indigenous side of the business world. Last year, I incorporated my company. I was running a sole proprietorship for about 5 years before that, so I've been in business as a corporation about 1.5 years now. And yeah, we found TAC online and applied for one of their sort of asset upgrade loans and partnerships, and I dealt with Brian at TAC, and he was great. It wasn't just the money that was helpful. His mentorship was also very good. The application process really made me think about what I was doing and wanting to be intentional. So that's a little bit about me. Sorry, I think I might have rambled for a little long, but
not at all.
Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you for sharing. And maybe, Anthony, could I come back to you? Because you've also worked with an Indigenous financial institution. Can you share a little bit about your experience working with them?
Yeah, well, I touched a little bit on this at the AGM up in Iqaluit. So actually working with TAC started probably about a year before I actually met Brian. So a lot of the work that you are all doing in here, you know, helping Sunshine with Powwow Pitch, helping Darian Kovacs with Jelly Academy, even with Bears Lair, I mean, you could keep on naming them. A lot of those programs really gave me that launch pad to actually get in front of Brian as well. And then Brian, TAC was the first person in my young 38 years of life to actually say yes to getting some money. So going to Brian, that was the first time I didn't feel like there was that predatorial, you know, person in that room that was just kind of looking to get some, you know, interest off of me and stuff like that. And just like Logan said, you know, Brian it was more than just a dollar amount, that motivation and support. And we've actually gone through a second round of funding. He really helped us actually launch into the United States. We just launched right before we had the tariffs come in, but that support is continued and ongoing. And yeah, no, we wouldn't be where we are today without the support of TAC, NACCA, and a lot of the programs that a lot of you sitting in here have supported. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. So maybe we'll switch over to some of our support organizations here on the panel. Certainly, Holly, you've been working with entrepreneurs, and Futurpreneur Canada has for many, many years. And I know, Michelle, you're starting that work now through the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation. So what are maybe some of the challenges or opportunities you're seeing young Indigenous entrepreneurs face, and what are you doing to support them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've worked with entrepreneurs for almost 10 years now, and I can very confidently say that there's one thing that I think entrepreneurs in general have as a barrier, and that's that they're really good at what they do. They're really good at the business that they're starting, the subject matter expertise, the products that they're making, but really bridging that into the understanding of business and how to create a business and run a business. You're doing two very different things. So you are, you know, being incredibly skilled and providing an amazing value proposition with your products and services. But then there's this other area of expertise that many people don't have. Not every person went to business school or, you know, learned as much as they could about business planning or marketing or financials. So I feel like that's one of the big barriers, is really just one, understanding that they are entrepreneurs and seeing themselves as entrepreneurs. I think that's a huge hurdle. And I always give this example, but it will never leave me. One time I went up to, I think it was in Musquecheese in Alberta, and I was presenting to a group of young people, all under 18, and there was about 40 in the room, and I asked them, how many people here are entrepreneurs or know an entrepreneur? And there was like maybe one or two hands. And then I explained what an entrepreneur was, and then asked them, and every single person had their hand up. And so just that reframing and that seat at the table, and knowing that economic prosperity, the foundation of that within Indigenous community, is really entrepreneurship. And if we believe that, and our youth believe that, they can really see themselves in that space, and then start to really understand what's out there, and lean on the supports. Like everybody here in this room are here to support our entrepreneurs to get to that point of economic prosperity, and provide that amazing network and community that we can foster. So I think that that's one major barrier. And then the other one, which I think we'll talk more about, is really just financial literacy and connectivity, and then that creation of community outside of community. And so really looking at your value proposition, your target market, and going, sky's the limit of where I can reach and what I can do. We just heard entrepreneur moving into the international market. How can we do more of that? And across borders, across provincial borders, territorial borders, and into the international market.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, we're definitely going to dive into financial and digital literacy more. But before we do, Michelle, you wear, I think, multiple hats. She's, of course, the executive director of the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation, but I believe you also have your own businesses or have run your own businesses in the past. So I think you can probably speak to this question from the experience of being an entrepreneur, but then also running a national charitable organization supporting Indigenous young entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what Holly said resonates. Before I stepped into this role, I was full-time in my businesses, so my consulting practice, where I primarily worked with economic development corporations, First Nations, and Indigenous-led businesses. And one really great example, and really what led me to this role, was that I was working with Capilano University's Indigenous Accelerator program. And what I saw there was much what Holly talked about. These incredible Indigenous entrepreneurs who were so passionate about the work that they had been doing. A lot of them had been in business maybe that 3 to 5 years. They were really, really good at what they did. But they didn't understand all of the business side of things. And the other thing was they didn't necessarily have the capital to bring in those professionals to support them. And so through that program, there was actually $60,000 worth of funding to bring on the consultants to support that infrastructure for them. People like accountants, like photographers and videographers to get branded content for them, to set up their websites or Shopify accounts. And then helping them with their marketing and business plans. And I think that something like that, to just create that infrastructure and set them up and provide the mentorship and support through that so that they're in a good place afterwards, was incredible. And I remember I had gotten off a call, I think it was late February last year, with one of the businesses I was working with. Their name's Bang and Bannock, originally based in BC, but also in Saskatchewan. And they were talking about what their vision was for the future. And it was so much bigger than just, pre-made bannock, right? It was about addressing things like food security in their community and cultural revitalization and language and telling their stories. And they had this vision of actually opening a cafe on their nation that would bring people together, that would be a gathering space, that would provide jobs. They had this idea of working with local hunters and developing a community garden. And it was so beautiful that I got off the call and I said to my husband, gosh, I think my passion is working with Indigenous-owned businesses. And the very next day, a recruiter called me and said, hey, Michelle, I have this opening for this job at the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation. I'm wondering if you might be interested. I was like, oh, I really wasn't looking for a job right now, but it sounds quite interesting. She was like, it brings all of your experience together, and I'd love to just, would you take 15 minutes to take a look at it? I thought, wow, talk about manifesting. So it really all came together for me. That experience as being an entrepreneur. I also have my own retail business still, and kind of have worked in that space. And I've experienced a lot of these things myself. Challenges with things like access to capital, with the digital literacy side of things. Even though, I'm an elder millennial, I feel like I know, social media and some of these things, but technology is moving so fast that you don't always know what you can be using to optimize your business. And then on top of that, just having mentors. I have amazing people in my network who have done some of these things, but not a lot of Indigenous entrepreneurs who have done these things, and accessing some of the programs and services that are out there, because there are a ton, but it's this very kind of disjointed system of you're spending hours and hours trying to identify what grants are available, what mentorship programs, et cetera, and it becomes really overwhelming when you're an entrepreneur. So I think there's a real need to bring those things together to make it easier for us to navigate those systems.
Thanks for sharing. And you brought up Banging Bannock, and I love that you did, because I also think they're a great example of a business that was established out of a youth entrepreneurship training program. They actually participated. It was the BC Association of Friendship Centers that hosted a youth entrepreneurship challenge over the course of a weekend. They participated and loved the idea of entrepreneurship. That's where the idea of Banging Bannock was established. So it's so cool to see that they started in this program, maybe 5 years ago, and now they're thriving as a business. So thanks for sharing that. Let's go back to Logan. What programs and resources have been most helpful for you in launching and then growing your business? I know you spoke a little bit about the support you received from TAC. Are there any other other programs or supports you've accessed along the way?
Nothing along the lines of funding or anything like that. What I will say is that one of the best decisions I made, or things that I did with my business, was bring on people who are smarter than me. And that speaks a little bit to the business side of things, and not really, maybe being passionate about what you do or being really good at what you do, but when it comes to that back end stuff, I mean, the taxes and the cash flow, it can all be pretty overwhelming. There's a lot to it. So, getting a good bookkeeper or CPA in your corner to kind of fight for you is huge, and to help you get paid and get paid well, because I think we have discussed this over the last couple days as well. We have a hard time paying ourselves enough as small business owners. So that's just a really important thing to keep in mind, is that you have to take care of yourself as well. It's not just pouring everything into your company and hoping it goes and hoping it goes well. You also have to take care of yourself at the same time. That can be hard to do sometimes. You look at your business as your baby a little bit, and so it's hard to take from there sometimes. But yeah, as far as, I'll just come back to the TAC project. I started, it was probably 6 months ago that we found TAC online. And I agree with what Michelle was saying, that it would be a little nicer to have some of these programs all in the same place. It was a little daunting searching for some of this stuff. Didn't really know where I was looking. I've kind of felt like I stumbled upon it a little bit. And I'm glad I did, because that's been super helpful for helping to scale and grow my business. But yeah, finding it all and having it all in one place, or at least closer together, could be beneficial there. The capital portion of the project, of course, was helpful for the scale. But like I said before, also the mentorship and working with Brian, and like Anthony said, that's the first person I spoke to basically in the business world or financial world that heard my story and heard what I was all about and just said, yeah, let's do it. So that's really important, because I've walked into banks before, insurance offices, job sites, or office buildings, and sort of not been laughed at, but maybe at the bank before. Applying for credit as a new business, I mean, it's kind of a nightmare sometimes. You feel pretty small when you walk in there. It's a lot of suits, it's a lot of people that know their stuff, and even for me, this is a personal experience here. Like, I was already in business for close to 5 years as a sole proprietor. When I incorporated my business, I'm now a different business name and a new entity. And I'd been operating on a $15,000 line of credit as a sole proprietor. And that was sort of my, backup cash flow if I needed it. And going to the bank as the corporation, I'm expecting, this now I've become more official. I've become more, credible. And I was only able to get a $4,000 line of credit as the corporation. And that was just because it was a brand new company and not an existing company with a history with, revenue or cash flow, that kind of thing. So that was really challenging and a little frustrating for me, because I'd already been doing it on my own and been operating, and I thought I was doing the right thing by making that next step, and then it kind of bit me in the butt a little bit, and I didn't see that one coming. So again, working with Brian, him saying yes and sort of nudging me in the right direction a few times and sort of like laying it out in front of me so I could pick up the pieces. I mean, yeah, what a difference from sort of some of the condescending stuff at the bank or on some of those bigger offices and stuff like that. So I really appreciate the personability behind these organizations, the IFIs. I mean, they're good people on the other side of the phone too. They're not just there to help you with your money, but they're there to ask you how things are going and check in with you. And I know Brian's not here, but if there's anyone from TAC that I haven't seen yet, I'd love to speak after this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Logan. Anthony, anything you want to speak to regarding your experience navigating the ecosystem? I know you touched on Powwow Pitch and TAC as well, some of the organizations that supported you. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, talking about that ecosystem, the support system out here, being on Powwow Pitch, some of the other different businesses like EDC, Export to Canada, trade commissioners, they're watching you while you're pitching in that. So once we did the Powwow Pitch, we were introduced to the World Trade Center, to the Vancouver Board of Trade, and that kept us going. And then we were introduced to some other programs, the ICEDA program, different Indigenous programs that you could attend. And I was able to just, we were a pandemic baby. So as soon as 2020 hit, the world shut down, all these different programs came out, and we just attended every single one that we could, and that's where that success came over those last 4 years of showing up at different events, participating in pitch competitions, putting ourselves out there, even though we didn't win, really has gotten us to where we are, where we're exporting internationally. We're in 241 stores in Walmart. We did that big launch with Fred Meyer with 51 stores in the USA. So, there's a huge ecosystem. Once, you get in that NACCA umbrella and you start looking around, you start seeing some of the successful Indigenous businesses, you see that route that it all kind of goes back up to NACCA. So, yeah, definitely had a lot of support, a lot of success. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we should clap for his success he had. 240 stores, that's incredible. Okay, so I said we'd come back to financial literacy, digital literacy, so let's turn it back to Michelle and Holly. Why is financial literacy and digital inclusion so important, and how are you approaching that through an Indigenous lens when you're engaging with youth? Maybe we'll start with Michelle this time.
I had mentioned, the first program that we launched back in October was our MoneySmarts board game. And what I think is really incredible about that game is not only was it, 3 years in the making, we kind of inherited it. It was a project that NACCA had taken on before we were even developed as an organization, but we were able to take it forward. And I think the really beautiful thing about that is that it's grounded in culture. It's like a Monopoly meets Game of Life, but really with Indigenous values at its core. And I think that's the reason why it resonates so much with youth. They have individual goals that they're working towards. It's not just about, how can I accumulate the most money? You can win different badges along the way. There's also community goals that you're unlocking along the way. And so it really aligns with this idea that it's about uplifting the entirety of the community, that, you can't thrive individually if your community isn't thriving. And, we've brought in Indigenous artistry, and you really see yourself in it. And it starts really great conversations. We find every time that the game is played, there's new kind of discussions and questions that come forward. And we actually had the opportunity earlier this week to do some training on Tuesday. We did an afternoon of facilitator training. So the way that we plan on delivering this game is through facilitators across the country. And when we launched back in October, we were actually overwhelmed with support. We had 59 people sign up in the first 3 weeks after we launched to become facilitators, which was incredible, but we weren't quite prepared for that and didn't have the infrastructure to deal with that. But we're now in a position that we do. And so there was so much interest. If anyone had been by our booth, we had the game set up that they did an impromptu second session for facilitators this morning, which is really, really incredible. So if you want to learn more about that, we're happy to chat with you about it. You can stop by our booth or you can go online. We are recruiting facilitators, and that's the way that we're deploying that into community. It's such, I think, an important and a way to be able to engage youth in something, to gamify it, to make it fun and engaging, and not just sit them in a room and, nobody wants to have someone, talk to them for 2 to 3 hours about money. You want to make it fun and engaging. And so that's one way that we're doing it. And we also have an online tool that we're optimizing for mobile devices right now as well. So that's something that they can go through on their own. They don't need a facilitator or a group there to do that. The second thing that I want to mention, and we're launching it later today is our Launchpad program, and that's a collaboration between DMZ, NACCA, and the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation, and that really looks at kind of building out the business acumen, and financial literacy is a core component of that. We know, as mentioned, sometimes you need to outsource those pieces. We're not all CPAs. We don't know how to do that. I think that was the best decision I ever made in any of my businesses, is to hire an accountant to do that, because I tried my first couple of years and it was probably the worst experience of my life. And then pairing that with access to capital, digital literacy, like you mentioned, is a huge component of that as well. And I mentioned, even feeling like I'm somebody who is fairly fluent in this world, I found myself overwhelmed once I created my website and figuring out how to optimize and e-commerce and marketing and some of these pieces. And so to be able to connect young entrepreneurs or early stage entrepreneurs with those resources, I think is really critical. And I think an emerging topic is AI. And it's a wonderful tool, but I think we need to be slightly critical of it. I think as Indigenous people, our stories are so powerful, and we were not at the table in the development of ChatGPT or some of these technologies. They don't know our stories and they can't tell them for us. And so to simply outsource our marketing to something like a ChatGPT, I think is incredibly dangerous. And so I think it's important that we teach people how to use these tools responsibly, that we don't lose our voices, and that we understand that one of the most powerful things as Indigenous entrepreneurs that we can do is to tell those stories, to be grounded in culture, and to understand our languages as we do that as well.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, AI is a hot topic right now, and I know it was discussed on some of the earlier panels over the last couple of days. Holly, over to you. I know Futurpreneur Canada has built out an entire financial literacy program, so maybe you can share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just want to be really real and really transparent, and I think everybody in the room who is Indigenous or has Indigenous ancestry comes from a very sad, broken history and originally we're so powerful. Our nations, our economies, our families, our clans, our communities were incredibly prosperous and were far advanced from the understanding, the reciprocity, and the taking care of one another. No one was left behind. And we had our very incredibly advanced ways of being and of trading, and our economies weren't led by money. We didn't have paper notes, we didn't have coins. We had a very different form of currency. And that was all taken away when colonization came to Turtle Island, and it came in those waves. And this new form of economy and a new importance in money was established. And our educational system, going through residential school, and I'll just say personally, I'm the first generation to not attend in my family, and that broken, fissured relationship with finances is really tied to my identity and tied to my family's identity. And there's a fear that's part of that. And there was no pride. And we weren't taught it in residential school. We weren't taught it now coming into public school. It's now coming, forefront to, I think my daughter is starting to learn much more than I did about money and about budgeting and about bank accounts and taxes. But even then, it's not where it needs to be. It's not how we can navigate in the world. And so when I started at Futurpreneur, one of the first things that we were looking at was creating a financial literacy program, and we got rid of financial literacy. We said, in financial empowerment, let's talk about that first, and let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to pre-colonization, to when our economies and our communities were strong, and we had pride, and we had such interesting and advanced systems. Let's think about that, and let's go back to community, and let's go back to the values and the teachings that our Muslims and Kokums gave us, and that we're continue to instill that pride within our children. And we're now in this generation where we can do that, and we can do that proudly. So all of that to say that was the foundation of Opikiwin. When we built Opikiwin, which means growth in Cree, and it's the journey to financial empowerment. And we built out a series alongside Indigenous community over the course of 3 years. We did many consultations within community and ensured that Indigenous voices were present throughout, and that those values were instilled as the foundation of the program. And so we're really proud of it, and it complements everything else that is happening around this topic right now. So sorry to go off on that tangent, but I think that, we gather here every year, and this is such a wonderful event, and it's about prosperity, and we're so lucky to be able to be prosperous now, and we're just building that. We're just on the verge of that, right? And future generations to come will be able to continue that. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks for sharing that perspective. It's so important. And we had Futurpreneur Canada come to our Adawe Indigenous Business Hub in Ottawa and deliver that program over a course of the weekend to some of our members. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Your team approached it from such a trauma-informed way and perspective, and created an environment where people felt safe to ask those questions and share knowledge and be curious. And so I just want to thank your team for the incredible work you're doing. I'm looking at the time. We only have about 12 minutes left, and I have so many more questions I want to ask, but I want to kind of switch the gears to leadership. So Anthony, you've joined NACCA's Indigenous Youth Business Advisory Council. You've served on this council for the last year. What's that experience been like, and why is it important to have youth in leadership roles?
The experience has been phenomenal. Besides flying all over the country and getting to these sweet hotels, it really gave us a perspective. Coming into this, being an entrepreneur from a city, I really thought that I was this incredible entrepreneur. I could do anything. And then we had the opportunity to go up to Iqaluit. And we went up there and we saw what it really looks like for a lot of the Indigenous youth across our country. And that was really that perspective that, as this youth council, when we have these opportunities to speak to rooms with this much power in here, we really got to make sure that those voices that don't have this platform are heard. So being on this council, going to these different locations, trying to get to the East Coast, trying to get up to the north, trying to get away from these urban cities where, a lot of us are already haves. We're starting to create this, haves and haves not with this digital literacy, with these AI talks and all that stuff. So this council has really, made sure that all the voices of our youth are being heard. And when we talk about, economies from coast to coast to coast, what works in Toronto has to work in Iqaluit. If we're talking about, programs for dollars for funding that are looking at a balance sheet, you can't compare something in Toronto to Iqaluit, where as soon as you're shipping your seal skin earrings, there's $40 in shipping. So I would really hope that, some of the ears in this room, just like the national chief spoke about yesterday, there's a big digital divide once you get up a little bit north. And I think the Youth Council has spent the last year really ensuring that some of those conversations are brought to the table. The program that Indigenous Youth Entrepreneur that was launched, we really looked at that, really understood what does credit look like, what does it look like for a young youth to have 5 years of business but can't access that actual credit. So being on this council has been a phenomenal experience. I think I'm on my sunset tour. I might have a couple more speaking sessions and I'll be aging out of this. But I really hope to push to get the northern communities to be part of this, the eastern communities to be on the council, so that we can get that voice from coast to coast to coast. And it's important for the youth to see ourselves in these positions. Stan spoke about it yesterday, about dreaming. You never dreamed about being on this position. I never dreamed about being able to be sitting in this position as well. And being on this council, going up to these different communities, we're putting that dream into a lot of these youth. So I think it's very important to have the youth as in these leadership positions.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony, and thank you for all your dedication over the last year. It's been such a privilege to get to know you and work with you. And thank you to NACCA, to our board of directors, to our senior management for supporting and allowing us to bring together the Indigenous Youth Business Advisory Council. I really feel it's been transformational for our organization and continue to be in the future. And on that note, they were also very supportive of us launching our first ever youth delegate program at our Indigenous Prosperity Forum. Logan, you're here as a delegate. Tell us a little bit about your experience over the last couple of days and how has it been connecting with other entrepreneurs and industry leaders, and how do you think this is going to influence you as you go forward?
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. There's nothing bad, nothing negative I could say about this whole experience. I feel very lucky to be here, and I couldn't agree more with Anthony about the importance of having that space for the youth and really helping bridge that gap. I think this board, this council is a great thing for anyone coming here for their first time. They can look at this board and it's someone who looks like them. It's a young person. I think coming here without the youth delegate program or being here kind of with less context or less prep time. We had a great day on Tuesday of just networking amongst ourselves, a little bit of workshops, training, and that was really good for, I think I can speak for the whole youth delegate program in saying that was really helpful for us to get to sort of spend a day doing it amongst ourselves before getting thrown into the ocean out here. Because I think just coming here yesterday without that would have been, could be intimidating. And in the scale of the event and the topics of discussion, that could be a lot for some people, I think, to just get thrown into right away. So having that day of just sort of working through your conversations, your networking, really, really important. And yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed being here all week, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So we have a few minutes left, and maybe I'll pass this over to Michelle. Can you talk about how the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation is collaborating with other organizations to strengthen the work you're doing?
Yeah, I mentioned the ecosystem being quite disjointed and overwhelming, and a lot of people have talked about their experience trying to navigate that. And as we went through our strategic planning process over the last 6 months, this was one of the areas that we recognized we needed to dive into wholeheartedly. So it's actually our very first strategic priority is to bring that ecosystem together. We don't need to lead the ecosystem. We're not trying to do that. But we are one of the only kind of national Indigenous foundations and the only one that's specifically focused in this area. So we have that ability to identify what exists already and bring it together into a hub to make it really easy for Indigenous entrepreneurs to navigate. That's probably one of the biggest challenges we're all facing right now. And then it also ensures that we're not duplicating efforts. We don't want to go out there and start competing with others who are doing great work in their respective fields. We want to know what those gaps are and then begin to address those and then look at how we can partner, and amplify others who are doing incredible work. So that's really what we're focused on right now, and we do that in a couple of ways. You may have seen, if you follow us on social media, we recently launched our digital access report. So it was 6 months of research that we had done in understanding what those gaps and barriers are for Indigenous entrepreneurs, and we had some specific calls to action around that. We're working on our financial literacy and access to capital report, and we'll be putting that out in September, so you can expect that to come. So we're really trying to share research and information around this, and then bring people together to look at how we can work together to address some of these pieces. And then the second way is through our Walk Together tour. And through this, we're doing 4 stops a year in communities that we do have, NACCA has Indigenous financial institutions, so we have that connection point into community, and we bring together ecosystem partners, who are the funders, the program delivery agencies, the nations that are represented in those communities, as well as entrepreneurs, to get their feedback about what they're saying. And that helps us to then either, bring that information together and then inform the work that we're doing moving forward. So those are a couple of the ways that we're doing that. And so you can definitely expect to see some big announcements coming in the coming months. So follow us on social media.
Amazing. And I know you're already working with Futurpreneur Canada and of course NACCA very closely. Encourage others to get in contact with you as well. Okay, so maybe as a final question, I'd like to pose to all of the panelists. How do you envision the future of Indigenous youth entrepreneurship, and what opportunities do you see lying ahead? And maybe we can start at the end and work our way back.
Yeah, I mean, I only see it getting better. I only see the programs growing and the support for the programs growing. So it's all looking good for, I think, Indigenous youth in business and for entrepreneurs. I see us playing a big role in some of the leadership positions, but maybe also just sort of driving that that door of bringing more people into the program young and keeping that door open, making sure that people know it's there. And yeah, I mean, over the last couple of days, we've talked and heard from other panelists regarding, obviously, the new government that's forming and the different sort of positions we hold in trade. So I'd love to see youth getting in on those conversations as well, and maybe not necessarily in the political side, but at least with respect to trade and energy. Our voices need to be heard in general, but having some sort of youth diplomats, I think, out there would be pretty cool to see. So, yeah.
Ditto to all of that. And this is such a loaded question, but I'm going to say, short version, my dream, and I hope many others' dreams, is that it's Indigenous-led, youth-led, this coming together, a space where everybody can come together. What Michelle is working on with IPF, like this is a dream in itself, to be able to, I know that entrepreneurs feel so, where do I go when? And where do I go within the journey? And it is overwhelming. And it's one of the barriers that I experience. So to remove that and have everything centralized, and that's so amazing. Continuing that, I would say just the recognition that Indigenous young entrepreneurs and Indigenous entrepreneurs are not starting from the same starting point as our non-Indigenous counterparts. So when we hear stories about going into banks and being refused, that's really disheartening and hurtful, because that understanding or that support isn't something that's common knowledge. So something we have to change. And with the 94 calls to action with TRC, I think we're on our way there. We still have a long way to go. But my big dream would be like in something like this conference, but bringing together Indigenous international entrepreneurs and creating our own international network across the globe. Because if we band together, the things we can do are absolutely endless.
It's hard to follow that one. I think just kind of what I touched on before, it would be really nice in my lifetime to see the North really included in these conversations, really starting to have a lot of the youth involved from the North, and really making sure that some of the people sitting at these tables really take that into account and get that infrastructure up there, get that connectivity. We're all sitting here, we're on our cell phones, and I go on Connected North, I go into these classrooms, and they don't have internet. They all have to go to the school to access that stuff. So, we sit about hear we said about prosperity. I think in my lifetime, I would like to see that prosperity go to that higher level. And actually, when we say from coast to coast to coast, we actually mean that.
Final words. Yeah, I think for me, what I see happening right now is there's just so much potential and growth that's happening within our communities. We're still the fastest growing community in Canada. More and more Indigenous people are looking to entrepreneurship for various reasons that we heard here today. And I see that economy continuing to grow and us having a larger voice at the table at all levels of kind of government, but also within the Canadian economy. And I think that's our goal ultimately at the Indigenous Prosperity Foundation, is to be fully included in the Canadian economy. And that's exactly what we're working towards. So we're more educated than we've ever been as Indigenous people. We are leading the way. And I think I have a lot of optimism looking forward.
Okay, thank you. If I can just take one more moment to just maybe some of the highlights that stuck out to me. Our young Indigenous entrepreneurs are passionate about the business they're doing. There's a bit of a learning curve when it comes to the business side of things. That's where we can step up as support organizations and offer help. When it comes to financial literacy, I love the idea of flipping the script, focus on the empowerment, the growth. Digital literacy, AI, we have to approach it carefully, but we also can't be left behind as Indigenous peoples. And I love, Anthony, what you shared about that snowball effect of when you start to get involved in the ecosystem and in the network, all of a sudden you're getting introduced to new people and to new programs, and they just keep building on one another, and it helps you grow as an entrepreneur. Logan, you shared the importance of self-care. In order to be, successful in business, you have to prioritize yourself as well. And I love also what you shared about you can't be the expert in everything, so reach out, get support, because that investment you make will have a triple in terms of the return it'll have on your business. So thank you everyone for your attention, for being here and listening to our incredible panelists. Please, let's give them a round of applause and enjoy the rest of your conference.